So today, being the last Sunday of the month, we're wrapping up a series that has been taking us through a journey of looking at relationships. And we began with the importance of starting with ourselves, looking at how we hold ourselves, looking at where there are areas within us that need to be healed or need to be understood so that we can be in a better position to be in relationship, deep, holy, significant, real, authentic relationship with others. And then we took a look at the importance of how we communicate with each other. I called it the sacred exchange, being able to communicate clearly and honestly, and how often when we think of communication, the first thing we tend to think of is what we say. And my challenge in that lesson was that it is first about how well we listen, and then from that deeper listening, how well we communicate whatever needs to be communicated. And then last Sunday we talked about nourishing the heart of fellowship and how important it is that we continue to grow in our skillfulness in being able to show up in relationships in a real and meaningful and authentic way. And today the focus is on the courage to be found. Take that in for a moment. The courage to be found. I'm thinking of love. I'm thinking of fondness, affection, appreciation. The courage to be found. Say that with me. The courage to be found. Maybe you've thought of that concept before, and maybe it's a very new and different idea to you. The courage to be found. You know, for a relationship to be significant and meaningful, whether it is a friendship, a partnership, an intimate relationship, in order for that to occur, we have to be willing to be found. And that seems obvious, and yet it's not necessarily something we do very well. And I'll talk a little bit about why maybe we don't do it very well. The myth of the search is the idea that we often speak of seeking God or finding love or finding that missing part. And as I was working on this lesson, and during the end of the week, I always wind up putting a few finishing touches, or maybe I've read a new article or found a new story that would fit and support the message. As I was putting this together and thinking more about the idea of the courage to be found, I was reflecting upon an article I had recently read in a new magazine that is now published by our Unity World Headquarters. And that magazine is Spirituality and Health. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. You see it in a lot of the health food stores. Spirituality and Health. It's a great magazine. And in it, I read your article, Jan Phillips. Jan Phillips is a longtime member of the Unity Center, an amazing teacher and photographer and author. And in it, she wrote an article that talks about mysticism, mindfulness, and the act of mattering. And it was this phrase that jumped out at me with regard to this idea of the courage to be found, which is different than seeking and trying to find something, but rather the willingness to be found. This is a paragraph that jumped out at me. Don't think of yourself as a seeker trying to find something or someone. Just stop there for a moment. Just stop there for a moment. Don't think of yourself as a seeker trying to find something or someone. Sit there and imagine light making its way into your bones and marrow. A fish doesn't seek water. A bird doesn't seek air. A mystic doesn't seek God. There is nothing to long for. The union already exists. These are the hands of God. This is the voice of Spirit. The union already exists. We just have to open our door to it. And it's different each day. I like that. That was helpful to me, Jan. And it's different each day, like love itself. Sometimes subtle, barely there. Sometimes all riled up, full of fury. Sometimes a stream of loveliness, quiet and pulsating. Don't think of yourself as a seeker trying to find something or someone. Sit there and imagine light making its way into your very bones and marrow. The courage to be found as we are, where we are, right here, right now. Do you remember that song that was popular? It's probably several decades ago now. The theme line of it was looking for love in all the wrong places, right? The outer direction, I'm looking for it, I'm trying to find it. And yet, as metaphysicians, as mystics, as spiritual students, it is the courage to be found, the courage to drop that which would block us from being fully united with that presence that already exists. Maybe we have it backwards. Charles Fillmore, who was a co-founder of Unity. Unity began in the late 1800s. It's been around for a little while. Charles Fillmore wrote, "Love is the great magnet of God." The great magnet of God. Do you remember as a kid playing with magnets? I do. I don't know if kids still play with those kinds of things now, but I remember playing with Etch-a-Sketch, right? Playing with magnets and those kinds of things. The magnet doesn't go seeking the iron filings. The magnet is just it, and it attracts the iron filings by virtue of what it already is. Take that in for a moment. By virtue of what we already are, we would attract that love. We would attract that light by virtue of what we already are. I'm going to read a story to you that I just came across. It's called The Invisible Woman. There was a woman who spent years searching for a spiritual experience. She went to retreats, read all the books, and prayed for a sign, but she felt invisible, blocked by a lifetime of not enoughness. Some of you might resonate with that. One afternoon, she sat in a park, exhausted by her own search. She wasn't praying, she was just there. A stranger sat on the bench across from her, an artist, sketching in a notebook. They didn't speak, but in the silence, she felt a strange magnetic shift. She stopped looking at her phone and just watched the light shimmering through the trees. As the artist got up to leave, he handed her a page from his book. It was a sketch of her, but not the tired, invisible version that she felt like. He had captured her in that moment of quiet, luminous, peaceful, and serene. He said, "I thought you should see what the world sees when you aren't trying to hide so hard." She realized then she didn't need to find God, she needed to stop hiding so that spirit, that God, that love could find her. That line, "I thought you should see what the world sees when you aren't trying so hard to hide." When you aren't trying so hard to hide. I imagine that every one of us in this room and all of us online as well have picked up over our lifetime of living ideas and messages that somehow caused us to hide, to not fully be ourselves because something was said to us about an aspect of our being not being okay. And so in order to be accepted or to be loved, we started to hide. We didn't start out that way. We start out free and fresh and full. Think of children, right? Children before the influence of adults. Think of children. I had a delightful experience just a few days ago in Emery Keffer's kindergarten class. It was delightful to see all of these vibrant, alive, playful, joyful, authentic, somewhat crazy from the teacher's point of view perhaps, children in the fullness of being authentic and real. And yes, as we grow up and mature as adults, we do need to learn certain skillful social behaviors. I understand that. But at the very core, who we are, we say this so often in Unity, who we are at the core was born right the first time. We are essentially good. We may have some rough edges that should be smoothed out a little bit, but each of us is unique and different. And in order to really have deep and rich and meaningful experiences, not only do we have to acknowledge that for ourselves, but we also have to recognize that to be true for the other as well. So the courage to be found is to be more like that magnet that naturally attracts to itself the love, the meaningful friendships and partnerships and relationships. But if that's so, why do we sometimes feel so disconnected? Why does it sometimes feel as though it's not working that way for me or for us? Have you ever felt that way? Why isn't it working that way? Why do I feel like I haven't been found? Why do I feel like I don't have the kinds of relationships that I would really like to have? I think that part of it has to do with the debris that we've allowed to accumulate on and around us. Think if there was caking over that magnet, debris over that magnet. Enough of that caking or debris would render that magnet not able to attract those iron filings. And in order to be able to attract them, what would have to happen first? It would have to be cleaned off, right? It would have to be cleaned off. I think it's why, I believe it was Meister Eckhart, who suggested that our spiritual journey is less about taking new stuff on and more about releasing that which isn't true. It's why often when people will say to me, who have come to Unity for the first time, well, I never grew up in church. I think, great, then you don't have a lot to unlearn. Because a lot of us, am I not right? A lot of us are here in this kind of teaching because we disagreed with, once we got old enough and felt courageous enough to question and challenge, we disagreed with some of that stuff. Am I right? Right? So, for those who come in without any of that religious baggage, I think you're starting off ahead of the game. But anyway, the debris that we collect that causes difficulty in us being found, in love finding us, because love is always present. It is always present. I'm talking about divine love. I'm talking about that one presence, that one power that is a force of good, that is the energy, the magnetic energy of love itself. So the first kind of debris is the debris of defense. Defense, think about it. When a young person falls in love or has a crush for the first time and then that crush ends, it is very common to start building a wall around the heart. We say, I'm never going to be hurt again, right? Maybe you've said those words, or maybe you've had somebody say those words to you after a breakup. I'm not going to love again. I'm never going to be hurt again. And we build that wall around the heart. And what happens is the love can't get in and the love can't get out as well. We carry programs in us, programs like past betrayals and grudges and resentments in relationship. And so we carry this debris of defense and thinking foolishly, really, that this defense is going to keep us from ever getting hurt again. It will also keep us from ever enjoying the richness of deep, significant, meaningful relationships, be they friendships, familial relationships, or intimate relationships. The correction is that if we believe we've been hurt by love, it wasn't love. If we believe we've been hurt by love, it wasn't love. Love does not hurt. Love heals. Attraction, addiction, emotional, relational addiction can certainly hurt, but love does not hurt. Love heals. The pain we feel is a result of the absence of love, not the expression of love. And so the work to begin to get rid of this debris of defense is a work of forgiveness. And we're not going to give a whole lesson on forgiveness here because it deserves its own. But the work of clearing out that debris of defense begins with the willingness to forgive. Some things are easier to forgive than others, right? Some hurts, some betrayals, some wrongdoings are much, much harder to forgive. I've often said, if you can't forgive, if you're not right there yet, then hold the energy. Pray for the willingness to want to forgive. I mean, I'm all for baby steps. Whatever will get us moving in the direction is good, is good. The forgiveness work that we do isn't about the other person, and that is the biggest stumbling block for most of us. We think the forgiveness is about the other person. It's not. It's about us. It's about us clearing that magnetic field, to go back to the metaphor. It's about us clearing the energy so we are free to move forward, so we stop replaying that hurt and pay for it again and again and again and again. If anybody is being let off the hook in the practice of forgiveness, it is us. Does that make sense? It is us. So the first is the debris of defense. The second is the debris of hiding. And I want to stop for a moment. Either you're really taking this in very deeply, or I'm not connecting. You're very quiet this morning. Are you okay? Yeah? I don't know about the folks online. Very quiet. Maybe you're eavesdropping on a conversation I'm having with myself. Anyway, the second, the debris of hiding. The debris of hiding. And that goes to our feeling not safe being who we are. I think one of the greatest gifts that we can give young people, give our children or the students we teach, or nieces or nephews or little ones in our neighborhood, one of the greatest gifts we can give them is to love them up as they are, to constantly reinforce their uniqueness, their beauty, their giftedness, their specialness. The more we can do that, the healthier we are going to create a human family and human society. We might be putting therapists out of business if we do a good enough job with this. Not that I'm wanting to see that happen, but so much of what causes somebody to go into therapy is stuff that damaged their very sense of self at a very young and vulnerable age. So the debris of hiding has to do with our willingness to be vulnerable. For love to be available, to have the courage for love to find us, we've got to be real. We've got to be real. We often hide behind a perfect version of ourselves. I thoroughly enjoyed watching the Olympics. And of course, if you know me, one of my favorite has been to watch the ice skating. And I absolutely adored watching Alyssa Liu. And the reason wasn't because of her amazing skating, absolutely amazing skating. It was because she was so much herself, so totally real, so relaxed, as if she wasn't at the Olympics. She said in numerous interviews, "This is about my art. This is no longer about the judges and about the competition and about the medals." And if you really watched her compared to the other skaters who were all technically excellent, you could see there was a difference, could you not? And that difference was psychological and emotional. It was not technical. It translated to her blades, but it began because of her vulnerability to fully be herself. Breathe into that for a moment. And think for a moment, we've been talking about relationships this month, of those relationships or places where you really feel that you can let your hair down and you can be you. Is that not an incredible gift? And do you not find yourself emerging from those relationships or those experiences feeling stronger and more whole and more capable to meet or do whatever it is that is up for you in your life? Yes? No? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So vulnerability, giving yourself permission to be you. That's it. Giving yourself permission to be you. And then the last that I want to share with you is the debris of expectation. I said that this was all about, I want to make sure I'm consistent with my language, the courage to be found. The courage to be found. One of the challenges I know we have as human beings is we like to tell an infinite universe exactly how to answer our prayers. And not only do we like to tell an infinite universe exactly how to answer our prayers, we tell the infinite universe exactly when we want those prayers answered. And I take it by your chuckling that you have found yourself to do some of that as well. It's the debris of expectation, and this is where the paradox of our teachings comes in. Because it is true that on one hand, we do want to have a vision of what it is that we want to bring forth in our lives, whether it's a relationship or something work-wise or health-wise. We have a vision, and that is a good thing. And we may even have an idea of the steps that we ought to take to manifest that vision. The opening, or what seems like the paradox, is then when I say, but we want to tell the universe how it's got to be, and we be specific about what you want. The caveat, or the way that we bridge those two seemingly paradoxical ideas, is the willingness to hold it lightly. To hold it lightly, meaning we think about what it is that we want. We visualize it, we can affirm it, we can have prayer partners support us around it, we can call Silent Unity to have support around it, we can even visualize the timing that we think will work, and then we let it go. And then we hold it lightly. And then we basically say this or something better, and I'm going to add another one, or slightly different. This or something better or slightly different. Too often, it's like we're trying to tell the magnet how it should work. We demand love, we want to feel loved, but we demand that it come from a certain person in a certain way at a certain time. We are putting a lot of restrictions on an infinite universe when we do that. An awful lot of restrictions on an infinite universe when we do that. And not only are we putting restrictions on an infinite universe when we do that, we are putting blinders on ourselves. So we can't see the good that's sneaking up back here, because what? We're fixated here. And so we hold it more lightly. We put some white space around it. We release the requirement that it needs to come in a particular way at a particular time. The love that we want to experience already exists right where we are. We can't escape it. We can have enough debris accumulated around our hearts that we don't attract it to us and we don't feel it, but it's still there. And sometimes it's right there, right before our eyes in the difficult relationships. I'll close with a story a ministerial colleague of mine shared with me years ago. She was having particular difficulty with her aging mother. And she found that her patience with her mom was wearing very thin, and that her mom would go on and on about different things and stories and complaints and criticisms and so forth. And the ministerial colleague said, she was really beginning to resent that, and that what she was wanting was a loving relationship. And then she decided to do something different. And if I remember the story right, she said it was kind of like an idea just popped into her mind. It wasn't like she was trying to figure out how to do it. She just knew that she ought to try something different. And the idea plopped into her mind to imagine whenever she was in interaction with her mom, and her mom was acting in the way that she found difficult, is she would imagine a bridge of roses connecting her heart to her mother's heart. And that despite what I talked about last week or 2 weeks ago about the importance of really listening and being fully present when another person is talking, she chose instead not to be fully listening to the complaints and the stuff that her mom was doing. She kind of let that just kind of go in one ear and out the other, and she focused on the bridge of roses from her heart to her mom's heart. And she said that it didn't take very long before she started to feel differently. And the love that she had for her mother started to be easier to access again, and it seemed that she was able to receive the love that her mother always had for her differently as a result of this little practice that she started to do. But what she didn't realize was that it was only a few months later that her mom had made her transition. And how important, she said, it was for her to have chosen to show up differently in that interaction, to connect in that way so that she could find the love that her mother had and for her, and that she could find the love that she had for her mom. So we've been on this journey together that began with ourselves and looking at what might need to shift in us or need to be healed in us, that we might be able to cultivate deeper, richer relationships. We talked about the importance of how we talk to one another, and that it is indeed important, and especially in those really important conversations, that we really are fully present, listening with every ounce of our being, with all of our senses, to what that other person is really trying to say to us. And we talked about the importance of nurturing our relationships, of going that extra mile to remember things that are important to another person and follow through on those things, how important our commitments and our words are, and to pivot if we need to. And then today, to really be looking at the courage, our courage to be found, because love is present right here, right now. And the very love that you might be looking for out there might be right in front of you, but you've had blinders on it so you can't see. Namaste.